The SP5K, or the baby model of the SP5/MP5, has been kind of a staple for a lot of PCCs, even to this day. A phenomenal platform brought to us by HK. It's popular in movies, and even to this day they're still being serviced, whether you are a collector or even just other countries out there. So we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the history, kind of the features about it, maybe some fun things we're going to be doing with this. So to start off with some of the history involved with the SP5, the SP5 really started its development in the early 60s and made its way into service kind of around 1966, where we saw a lot of military and law enforcement agencies really putting this pistol here into service. The K came around more, a few years after, kind of around the 1970s, mid 70s, around that time. This compact style was more for, CQB stuff, because your traditional MP5 was a little bit longer, not as compact. So the K was strictly made for those government or law enforcement agencies, for like trucks, keeping it packed away, super tight build, but still held up to its kind of bigger brother in reliability, ergonomics, and overall features of the gun.
This operating system, the bigger brother to this pistol, or PDW, is based off of the HK G3. These use a roller delay blowback. So unlike direct blowback, where pressure builds inside of the barrel, and once that pressure reaches a certain point, it automatically will cycle the gun. These use rollers in a bolt carrier that essentially lock the bolt carrier into place once it goes into battery. And then as pressure builds up, those rollers release, indent back in. Then it functions very similar to a direct blowback firearm to operate the gun, essentially. Unlike direct impingement rifles or piston rifles, they build pressure up, and then it uses an operating rod or a gas tube. With that pressure, will cycle the firearm. It's all integral to the barrel and the bolt carrier, how they cycle. But with that, they do run a little dirty, just because that pressure is what's opening the bolt carrier itself. It's not being built up, and something externally is forcing the bolt carrier group into the receiver to cycle the firearm. It's directly all taking place right at the chamber. Ridiculously reliable as long as you take care of it and lube it properly. These guns have been used and have had millions and millions of rounds through them throughout various countries in the entire world. They've existed for such a long time and have been beaten to death that we wanted to go a little bit in depth on how good of a system this really actually is.
Yeah, and the cool thing for us, especially, talking about civilian market here in the US and us importing them, the actual K model, the one you're seeing here, the SP5K, was starting to be imported in around 2016, 2017. So that's when we could actually get our hands on it. And to clarify, SP5 versus MP5, SP5 is obviously your civilian model. Your MP5 is more your military and law enforcement models. So just a quick clarification there, as I'm sure many of you know.
Functionally, they're very identical. They use the same roller delay blowback system, the SP5 next to the MP5. The main key differences is the bolt carrier. In these, the SP5 is semi-automatic. It doesn't have a specific cut for it to operate essentially as a machine gun. And the trigger pack itself. These come from the factory with an MP5 or SP5 Navy style trigger pack and lower control group or receiver, and it's select only between safe and semi-automatic.
And as we're talking about the history here, we kind of get that term of like pre-ban versus, current production. Kind of talking about some of the pre-ban stuff, or what does that mean? Your older models of the SP5 didn't have some of these today features. HK actually will date code a lot of their firearms to kind of showcase when these features came into play. Like a lot of your early pre-bans, they didn't have threaded barrels. They didn't have the paddle release for the mag release.
A lot of them had clips for slings right here as well, like small features here and there. A lot of them weren't ambidextrous either earlier on. So there's been minor improvements since the early MP5s.
Mm-hmm. Which has been pretty cool to see, because, as we all know, like a lot more of ambidextrous style firearms are becoming a thing, threaded barrels are becoming a thing. So even though this gun, like I said, started way back when, early 60s, kind of 70s era, it's still seeing improvements to this day.
Okay, so in this SP5K that we have with us today, we swapped out the fire control group with something that's called an FRT that many people are already very familiar with. Out of the box from Rare Breed Triggers, it's a drop-in trigger pack. It goes directly into this factory lower receiver. They're safe, semi, and then FRT mode, which is still semi-automatic, and it's very, very fun.
There's still a trigger pull between each of them, but yeah, FRTs are very hot right now. They're, I mean, talk of the town right now. I mean, even in the shop today, we get questions all the time about them. We're seeing videos online. You know, we're not the first ones to really talk about these for sure, but actually talking about one in an SP5, which once again, very popular PCC platform, you know, how to get your SP5 or just an SP5 here with one of these FRT trigger packs. So the FRT we're actually running in our SP5 here is the one from Rare Breed. Theirs is a very simple drop-in, as Emerson was saying, fire control group, drops right in there.
And it looks just like HK's like factory trigger pack, essentially. It's kind of crazy.
Installs relatively
so easy. Like you swap out either pins on either side of the safety selectors, pull the original pack out, drop the new one in from Rare Breed, and that's it, you're good to go. Super
simple. I mean, as far as like a traditional trigger you may buy, like, you know, for your AR-15 or just a normal trigger, FRTs typically will ride on the higher price range. The one here from Rare Breed, actually MSRP is $599.99. So it's not a traditional price tag for most of your common triggers. However, it does have a pretty cool function, as we've talked about here, and Emerson's going to kind of demonstrate for us here that kind of gives it that price tag. So Emerson, if you like to kind of show off.
Yeah. So on a machine gun MP5, the hammer keeps falling as the bolt carrier goes back into battery. FRT, or a forced reset trigger, means exactly that. So right now it's on safe, and you put it in semi-automatic. Each trigger pull is resetting the trigger. That you have to pull it each time, essentially, you fire around.
You essentially have to let the trigger reset on its own.
Whereas
your finger,
FRT mode, you throw it into that after you cock the hammer, pull the trigger. As the gun operates, it forces the reset of the trigger, and then as it goes back into battery, it lets the hammer down again. So you're essentially pulling the trigger each time as that trigger is being reset by the bolt carrier in the FRT, if that makes sense. So this is not fully automatic. It is semi-automatic with a forced reset.
Makes it a lot more fun to shoot. A little bit more expensive for, you know, ammo prices and whatnot, but definitely a lot of fun to experience for sure. We already went ahead and dropped in the Rare Breed FRT. We've got some loaded up 115 grain Blazer 9mm, and we're gonna test it out here on the range. Ultimately see how reliable the Rare Breed trigger FRT is. We'll run some in semi just to ensure that works, but also we'll put into the FRT mode and make sure that works as well. You ready, Emerson?
Yeah, first time shooting it, so.
Yeah. So that was semi, rolling into FRT. That was cool. Pretty enjoyable. You could definitely feel that finger slap a little bit with the FRT moving. That FRT trigger, I mean, wow, that was pretty cool.
Same thing, 115 grain. You definitely can feel a little bit of like finger trigger slap from that FRT resetting. It feels a lot more consistent and smoother than any of the other options prior to a drop-in cassette trigger.
Yeah.
Like I know there's a Lee Sporting lower that you can use like a super safety with, like an AR style fire control group, but you need a trip and everything. So this is a lot easier because we obviously just threw it in there and it.
I was gonna say, it's not like a hard like trigger slap, pushing your finger forward like super hard. It's there and you're almost like gliding with it, but it's nothing like, we're already 2 mags deep, no malfunctions. It's pretty sweet. With suppressors or running an FRT suppressed, what are some big changes we could see as far as one, the gun, and also with an FRT trigger? Like, what can we see possibly affected?
Depending on the suppressor that you throw on any of your 9mm PCCs, but definitely the HK SP5 or MP5. If it's a high back pressure can, like the Spectre 9 from Silencer Co., it'll change the cyclic rate a lot. So some fine tuning may need to be done, throwing on a high back pressure can and what grain and load the gun likes. But obviously there's low back pressure suppressors now that'll mitigate that a lot.
So there's a possible chance, one, we may see malfunctions with this setup or it running a little bit faster.
Most likely, yeah.
Let's see. Let's see the FRT. That felt a little bit faster.
Yeah.
That felt a little bit
And
faster.
it looked like the ejection was a little off too. It was further forward, so which makes perfect sense.
The ejection's a little bit different. That's faster.
Yeah, so just adding a higher back pressure suppressor, as small as the Spectre 9 is, it really builds up your cyclic rate quick.
That was pretty darn fast.
The only thing that I'd worry about as the consumer is if the cyclic rate is too fast, depending on the suppressor that you're using or ammo that you're shooting. If this is moving so fast, you could dent one of your rollers just because you're beating up the gun with how fast that bolt carrier is moving. So that'd be the only thing I'd worry about. You'd typically on paper get the most reliability just having a slower cyclic rate.
Yeah.
You can do that by swapping out a couple of the internals, like the locking piece.
Let's head back to the shop and show these guys a little treat we got in comparison to this. So that was pretty awesome shooting the FRT. It's a lot of fun to shoot these things, especially on the SP5 platform. These things are extremely comfortable to shoot. So putting it in FRT mode, I mean, it really is a smooth actioning gun. No complaints about shooting this thing. I mean, I know you have your own, but I mean, shooting these guys are freaking awesome. It's hard to really compete with it, except when you have something a little bit special. You want to show us what we got, Emerson?
Yeah. A little nugget for you guys. We have with us here a real pre-band transferable MP5 machine gun, which is pretty cool. It's a 4-position too. This is obviously completely different on paper next to this being a forced reset trigger.
Yep.
This is an actual legal machine gun that was put on the registry, the NFA registry, pre-1986 with the tax stamp and everything. So this is a legal transferable machine gun, but because there's a finite amount of them, they're continuously getting more and more and more expensive each and every single day.
And I mean, the cool thing is too, is like, as we were talking earlier about this segment, you know, with baby brother of the SP5 world and kind of your bigger brothers in the G3 realm. I mean, with the MP5, you can obviously see in, you know, size comparison, right? This is a much more compact, you know, system here versus this guy here, a lot bigger, beefier, a little bit more room for, you know, attachments and features and whatnot. A lot different features being a machine gun, which is pretty freaking awesome. And I think a really cool comparison to see the differences between the two, not just SP5K, MP5, but we're actually, you know, able to compare an FRT trigger to, well, a legitimate machine gun. Yeah, which is pretty freaking awesome. So yeah, let's take this thing for a whirl and see how it shoots on the range.
Yeah. All right, you guys, we're gonna shoot the MP5 machine gun side by side with the rare breed SP5K. This side by side to the FRT, there's no trigger slap, obviously, because this is a legal machine gun. And it is a little bit softer shooting just because of the size and weight difference, where it's a full size instead of the K. There's a small noticeable difference in just the trigger quality and feel, just because, like I said, there's no slap on the trigger.
I am at a lack of words. That was impressive.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah, it's the easiest solution by far
Yeah.
to run an FRT in those things.
I don't know, this one seemed a little bit faster than that one, but it could have been because of the suppressor. That was freaking amazing. I would imagine that one has a little less oomph than this one. This one kind of pops up a little bit, especially with that trigger.
It's tough because they should both be suppressed. I don't know.
That is true.
But wow, I think that's faster.
I think this is faster. It even sounded like it. That one's kind of got a dut, or something.
How much fun.
I mean, that was amazing.
2026.
Freaking cool.
Living the good life.
Freaking cool.